So when I go door to door and I am talking to voters, the number one issue that I hear is property taxes. People are being priced out of their homes. And there are all these second and third order effects for our community because we are driving people out of our community and we're driving people out of our state with these runaway property taxes. I hear, when I was started running, right before I was elected, Cushing Hospital went away. I always get tickled every election during the municipal elections. Some candidate's gonna say, I'm gonna bring a grocery store to North Leavenworth because there's no grocery store in North Leavenworth. Well, you know why that hospital went away? You know why there's no grocery store in North Leavenworth? Because there's not the money to support those services, right? And so they leave. And the reason there's no money is because the people that can afford to leave our community are leaving our community. And a big part of that's property taxes. Another part of that is crime, which we'll talk about in a minute, but a big part of that is property taxes. So if we want these services, if we want these amenities to come back, which is why I got involved in this and why I talked my beautiful wife, Aria, into letting me do this, it took a lot of persuasion, is because I want to bring Leavenworth back. I want these jobs and opportunities back. I want these services and amenities back. And the only way we're gonna get them back is to get the people back. The way we're going to get the people back is to get our property taxes under control. A couple other things, but that's a big piece of it. So that's all a bunch of talk. What has Pat Proctor actually done to address this issue? Well, I'm glad you asked. So the first thing that we did was, like I said, bring accountability back to the system. So there used to be this shell game that would occur with our property taxes every year, and it used to drive me insane. It used to make me so mad when I opened the paper and there'd be a big headline and it'd say, Leavenworth County Commission decides to keep property taxes flat. And they're saying it like it's good news, right? And it sounds like good news. You're like, wow, they're gonna keep property taxes flat. Property taxes aren't gonna go up. Well, property taxes are made up of two things. It's the mill levy, which the county commission, the city commission, the school boards, have control over, or the mill levy that they have control over, and then it's the valuations, which are set by the property assessor and based on this big formula, right? Which we could talk about whether we like that formula, we can talk about whether we need to reform that formula, and I will in a second, but that's how the property taxes are set. And so if property values go up 15% every year, like they've been going up in recent history every year, and the county commission pats themselves on the back and keeps the mill levy flat, your property taxes go up 15% a year. And they would sit on their hands if you complain about it and say, well, hey, it wasn't us, it was the assessor. Go talk to the state because the assessments are out of whack. Well, they could have dropped the mill levy exactly the same percentage as the property values went up, and our property taxes wouldn't went up. They chose not to do that at each level because there was, nobody was really holding them accountable. And so the first thing that we did, and I was a huge advocate of this. I was in the House at the time with Representative French, who got me into this mess. And we voted, and I was proud to stand with the coalition that voted for truth in taxation. What truth in taxation does is it prevents them from just sitting on their hands, keeping the mill levy flat, and letting the assessor raise your taxes every year. Now, whether it's the county commission, the city commission, or city council out in Lansing, or the school board, they have to affirmatively vote, yes, we want to raise all our neighbors' taxes. And if they don't, then the mill levy automatically drops by the same percentage that the valuations went up, and our property taxes don't rise. And that's worked some. The school board, a couple of years ago, they remained revenue neutral. We've got a city commissioner here. Last year, the city remained revenue neutral, so the property taxes didn't go up to the city. But a lot of these local governments, they just kind of thumbed their nose at the public and said, we're going to raise them anyways. We're going to go ahead and raise them anyways, including our county commission. Well, two of those commissioners aren't gonna be back now because they thumbed their nose at the public and they told them, you know, we'll do whatever we want and to hell with you, and so they're not coming back. And so we're one seat away in the county commission from getting people in, you know, getting a majority in that will hold the line on property taxes. Vanessa Reed, who beat Vicky Cause in the county commission, she was one of the people. She was the person that led the charge to keep the school board revenue neutral 2 years ago. Willie Dove used to be a state representative. He's been working on this problem for years. I'm confident he's going to be one of those guys too. And then we just got to flip one more out, and we've got a majority on the county commission to at least hold it, you know, under control. And you know, I hear, man, Vicky Cause, she does not like revenue neutral, and she was going after me in the county commission meeting on Wednesday, and she says, I resent truth in taxation. I resent that we're being held to this revenue neutral standard. Well, you know what? You know, I have a newsletter. If you're not on my newsletter, please sign in and put your email there. I'll get you on my newsletter, because what I do is when these revenue neutral hearings come around, I tell you about them, because you get something in the mail, but you get a lot of things in the mail. That was part of truth in taxation. You get a thing in the mail, hey, they want to raise your property taxes this much, and this is when they're going to have a hearing. But people are busy, and so I try to let you know in my newsletter, hey, this is when they're going to meet. I wouldn't be putting that in my newsletter if they were only raising property taxes with inflation. I wouldn't, you know, because they're a government and they have to keep the you know, the services going. They need to keep the sheriff's office running or the police department running. They have to do those things, and so I wouldn't be beating them up. I wouldn't be telling you go email them or go talk to them, which is what I do in my newsletter. I wouldn't be doing those things if their property taxes were only going up with the rate of inflation. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is it's going up 15% every year, right? Now this truth in taxation law has had an impact. It has had an impact. This is probably, if you look at your total, if you live here in Leavenworth like me, when you look at your total property tax bill after all the votes that have taken place, this is probably the least that our property taxes have gone up since I've been in office, since truth in taxation went into effect. And frankly, some of that is because we've held them accountable, we've shined a light on it, you've shown up, you've emailed, and they're you know, and two county commissioners just got knocked off, and so they're a little bit more reluctant to raise our taxes. However, we're not there. We're not there. We're still going up at greater than the rate of inflation. And so there are going to be, we need more tools. We need more tools to hold the local governments accountable, but also up here at the state level, because the state has a piece of your property taxes. So I'll continue with what we've actually done, okay? What we actually did this year, you know, Governor Kelly came the other day and came to the Council on Aging and did a signing of our tax bill, Senate Bill 1. That was the 4th tax bill we sent her this year, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But in that was a cut to the property taxes at the state level. So a lot of people don't know this. You know, obviously the school is the largest portion of your property taxes. There's also the city and the county. But part of that school component is a state set mill levy, 20 mills, okay, which is a really big number. 20 mills of your property taxes goes to the state, but is distributed to the schools through this wacky formula that nobody understands. What we did this year, and again, I'll talk about what we need to do, what we sent the governor 3 times that she vetoed, but what we are actually able to compromise with the governor and get passed was an increase in the amount of your house that's exempted from that 20 mills. So on the books at the beginning of this year, before we went into session, there was an exemption of your property value of $42,000. $42,000 of your house value was not subject to that 20 mills, that state 20 mills. What we did is almost double that. to $75,000. So now the first $75,000 of your house is shielded from that state property tax. Not all the property tax, but that state property tax. So it's not nearly as much as we wanted. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it is property tax relief. Okay, so that's what we've done. That's what we've done. We raised the exemption, almost doubled it, and we did truth in taxation. What do we need to do? Because clearly, it's not enough to completely solve this problem. Our property taxes are still going up at more than the rate of inflation. Well, the first thing that I've been a huge supporter of ever since I got up there, and we got really, really close this year to do it, was capping valuations. You know, the Democrat candidate for president, Kamala Harris, she's got this policy as part of her economic policy, and it's, we're going to tax rich people, which is apparently retirees. We're going to tax rich people on unrealized gains. And so her plan is, if your 401k or your retirement investment grows, even if you don't sell it, if it stays in there and you haven't seen a cent of extra money, we're going to tax you on how much it grows. Which I'm wondering, how am I supposed to come up with the money without selling it? And then if I sell it, I'm going to have capital gains on top of my unrealized gain, right? It's just
How about if it goes down?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What if it goes down? Is the state going to pay me? No. Okay. So that's what we're doing right now. That's what we're doing right now with our property taxes, right? Because when I say, and this happens to me every year, I live on a little house, or it's kind of a medium-sized house. It's nothing big. It's a wood construction on Kickapoo, right off of 7th Street, right? Nothing special. I mean, everything's old here. It was built in 1889, but it's not like, one of those big mansions out on Broadway or 3rd Avenue. It's just a regular wood construction house. And every year, like clockwork, that house goes up 15%. And I get taxed more. That's taxing me on unrealized gains, because unless I sell that house, that my house is, I don't have 15% more money, right? And so if we can, what I have been fighting for the last 4 years I've been serving you in the legislature is capping how much that can go up every year. If Pat Proctor were governor and 84 legislators and 27 senators, I'd cap it at 0. Because until you sell it, you should be taxed on whatever it was when you bought it. But you got to get a supermajority to get. It has to be a constitutional amendment because some genius wrote property valuations right into the Constitution. And so if you want to change how property valuations happen, you have to do a constitutional amendment. So you need 2/3 majority in both houses. So this last session, we got it through the Senate, or in the first year, we got it through the Senate, 4%, which is a heck of a lot better than it's been here for a long time. This year is the first time that Leavenworth's only gone up 4%. Every other year it's gone up 15% in recent memory. So it capped it at 4%. And then if the local governments wanted more than that, they'd have to raise the mill levy, right? Which they've done in a couple of jurisdictions, but they'd have to raise the mill levy, which is a lot harder to get voters to go along with. That passed the Senate last year, and then this year it got over to the House, and the farmers and the ranchers had a big problem with it, because out west, they were afraid that counties would go after the agricultural land for the money that they weren't getting from the homeowners. Now, I'm a commercial owner. Me and my wife, we've got several properties here right downtown in Leavenworth, and I get, it's almost 3 times. My rate is almost 3 times a homeowner's rate. I still want this, okay? I still want this, even though it's going to cost me a lot more money, because the city's going to have to come after the commercial property to give this break to the homeowners. But I'm not gonna have a business if we don't have homeowners, right? I could have low taxes on my restaurant on, 4th and Cherokee. It ain't gonna matter if there's nobody who lives here to go in it, right? So I'm willing to eat that additional money in order to give homeowners relief. But ag is king here in Kansas. It's a huge industry, and so we're gonna have to come back next year, and we're gonna have to work out something with the farmers and the ranchers to address their concerns. But I'm not done. We are getting this done. We are getting this done, because this is the way you fix a problem. This is why, people are leaving in bucket loads from California now, because it's crazy town. But for a long time, people were staying there, and older people were able to stay in their homes because they had done Prop 13, which was a zero raise in your valuation as long as you don't sell your house or change the square footage, right? So this is the solution. Interim solution. I want to cut that state mill levy. That 20 mill levy. I want to cut that thing, right? I'm going to cut it as low as I can cut it. We're still going to fund the schools. We're going to take it out of the general fund, whatever we take away from them, because I voted every year that I've been in the legislature to fully fund the schools. We need the schools, okay? I'm not saying take money away from the schools. I'm saying not break the back of homeowners paying for school, right? We sent the governor 3 times this year and 1 time last year a cut to the state mill levy. And 4 times she vetoed it. And we had the majority we had the super majority on the vote, but like I said, Democrats, man, they lock arms. And when the governor says jump, they say how high, and she said we're vetoing this, and all the Democrats, or most of the Democrats, including our senator, unfortunately, voted to sustain her veto, and we didn't get our mill levy. And so we got to go back and we got to do that. And that's why I say we need a super majority so that we can make up for some of those crazy votes that, Republicans that don't vote with us. We need enough votes to override her veto, because she is not going to do it willingly. Why would she sign an exemption and not a mill levy cut? Because the mill levy cut's a lot more substantial cut. And the mill levy cut addresses this valuation thing, right? So if I go from 20 mils to 18 mils on the school and the valuations are going up 10% every year, they're going to get less of that valuation jump because there's fewer mills that's multiplied by. So she's going to fight us tooth and nail. The only way we're going to get that done is over her veto. Okay. I'm going to stop there on the property tax because I do want to talk about this other issue really quickly. But I'm leaving plenty of time for questions at the end here. I'm going to leave 20 minutes for questions. So if you want to dive into more, we can do that in the question and answer. Another thing that's driving folks out of Leavenworth is the crime here in the city. I walk and knock doors up there on the Esplanade, and a lot of those people feel like they're under siege, because there's their houses, and then one row back starts Northeast Leavenworth, and there are a lot of issues down there in that area. And a lot of those issues are related to fentanyl. But not all of them, but a lot of them are related to fentanyl. The rest of them are related to folks that are living below the poverty line, living in the system instead of growing their lives and growing their futures. And I'll talk about both of those very quickly. The other thing that we sent the governor in that Senate Bill 1 was a cut to the income tax for everybody. I know, whenever you do it, income tax, immediately, it's tax break for the rich, tax break for the rich. Well, the governor agreed to this one. And by the way, she also agreed to the Social Security income tax cut, which I'm a big supporter of, but it starts at $75,000 and more, income. So that's clearly upper income compared to the folks that we did the income tax cut for. So apparently it depends, whether they're voters or not, whether she opposes an income tax cut. But anyways, as part of the income tax cuts that we did, We want the leadership, and frankly, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I'm gonna leave in the video anyways. I really don't care if we're in a single rate or a double rate or a triple rate. I was not really passionate about that, because when I talked to y'all ain't really passionate about that. So I didn't really fight super hard for that. But the leadership was very, very determined. And I understand why they wanted it. It does make more sense. It does make it easier to cut taxes in the future. So I understand. I'm not criticizing them for supporting it, but I wasn't really that passionate about it. What I was passionate about is providing the most property tax relief at the bottom end, at the very lowest income end. And I'll tell you why. When I was running the first time to serve you, the number of people in my neighborhood that I would meet up in North, and I still talk to them, I live up there, so I see them all the time, and I'm up there knocking doors again. The number of people that I met who are first, second, third generation living in the system, living on food stamps or disability or a combination of both. And that puts a salary cap on your life, right? In order to qualify for those benefits, you have to make under a certain number. It's around $16,000. Don't quote me on the number, but it's around $16,000. If you make under that, you get all of these additional benefits. And what it does is it creates this huge chasm, right? It's over $10,000. It's over $20,000. I think it's like $24,000 for a family. $24,000 that they would have to make up an income before they were out of the system. And so if you had lived in that system your whole life, and your mom had lived in that system, and your grandma had lived in that system, what would you do? You'd make under $16,000 so that you qualified for all those benefits, right? I would do the same thing. I'm not lying. If I had grown up in that environment, that's what I would do, because it makes sense, right? And so what I've been trying to do since I got up there is find ways to incentivize taking the leap of faith. I'll tell you what, with the way wages are right now, it doesn't take much to get on the other side of that chasm, but we've got to help them out. And so the way we helped them out in this tax bill, and I screamed from the ramparts, I lobbied my fellow legislators, I sat in tax conference committees, I did everything I could to make sure this stayed in Senate Bill 1. If you make $24,000 or less now, after Senate Bill 1, you don't pay income taxes. It used to be all the way down here, but now it's all the way here. So if you make less than $24,000, you don't pay any income taxes at all. So you keep every cent that you make at the state level. Now, everybody else gets that too. So if you make $100,000, your first $24,000 aren't taxed, because it has to be fair. We can't create a perverse incentive to make less than $24,000 either. So it has to be everybody, or you're just raising the salary cap on people's lives, right? And so that is in this bill. And what I hope that will do is that will encourage more of these folks to take that leap of faith and get out of the system and get back into jobs, get into jobs, some of them, real good paying jobs for the first time, grow in their lives, grow in their futures, and grow in our economy. Because part of the reason that a lot of these businesses are closing is we've got a lot of people that aren't in the workforce, and there isn't anybody to work in the businesses, and the businesses are closing. But that fuels crime. When people stay in the system, you can't live. I mean, I don't know if you've been, I went today to get donuts at the Price Chopper. They're really good donuts, by the way, eat one before you leave. I went to the Price Chopper to get donuts. It is out of control. It's like over $1 a donut now for a dozen donuts. They're good donuts, but damn. It's like, wow. You can't live on $16,000 plus your EBT for food. And so what are people doing? They're in the cash economy. Some of them, they're mowing lawns, they're doing handiwork, they're doing, we don't do this because, we're going to follow the law, but a lot of them work in restaurants for cash instead of paychecks on the payroll. We don't do that because I'll tell you what, I'd see it on Facebook the day I started doing it. And it makes it harder for businesses that want to follow the law to compete. So there's this huge incentive to fuel the system, right? But some people, that cash business that they're doing on the side is crime. whether it's theft or it's selling drugs or selling even worse stuff that's horrific to think about, right? So if we want to address that problem up in Northeast Leavenworth, and we want to clean up that area and get people back to growing their lives instead of having to fight to survive in this cash economy, both illicit and not illicit, we've got to get those folks back in the economy, growing our economy, growing their lives, and growing their futures, giving them hope. And so that's one of the things we need to do. And I'm very passionate about this. I could talk for days about this. If you want to talk about it more in the questions, I can. But the other thing is we have got to address this crime problem. And since the border became a disaster, a lot of it is fentanyl. A lot of it is fentanyl. We had 11 young people in Leavenworth die last year of fentanyl overdose, fentanyl poisoning. If 11 people got shot on Spruce Street in a year, it would be a countywide emergency. We'd have the sheriff's office doing patrols on Spruce Street. We'd have cops on every corner. We'd be stopping. If 11 people were killed in traffic accidents in downtown Leavenworth, people would be in the city commission or city commission meeting screaming to do something about the traffic problem. If 11 people died of whatever, it would be all over the paper. But for some reason, 11 kids dying of fentanyl poisoning doesn't even make the paper. I don't understand that. I can't wrap my head around that. I have theories, but they're just theories. People think, drug addicts. Well, first of all, every person is a child of God and loved by God. And so, you don't dismiss somebody because they are trapped in addiction. But a lot of these people are not drug addicts. A lot of these people are experimenting with drugs or recreationally using a drug, and they think they're taking a Percocet. They think they're taking an Oxycontin, and they take it, and it kills them because it's a lethal dose of fentanyl. I'm on the Kansas Security Committee, and we had a hearing last year, and the KBI and the Highway Patrol, the state troopers came and talked to us, and they said that last year they seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in Kansas 5 times over. And they said that the pills, these fake pills that they seize, 60% of them have a lethal dose of fentanyl in them. What kind of business model is that? 6 out of 10 pills you sell are going to kill the user. Okay? This is chemical warfare waged by China through the open border against the American people to kill our young people. Okay? And so we got to do something about this. We've done a lot in the legislature on the fentanyl problem itself. A couple years ago, we legalized fentanyl test strips so that people who are using drugs can at least know if they're taking fentanyl by testing it. I'm not a fan, but it's an emergency. We got to do something. You don't want to encourage drug use. I don't think it does encourage drug use, but we got to do something because our kids are dying. I was proud just the other day, yesterday, I went up to the Topeka. The governor signed our Good Samaritan law. I co-sponsored it. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. We co-sponsored the bill, and she signed it into law yesterday. If there's a bunch of people together and one of them overdoses and they call the police or call EMS, they won't be arrested as long as they don't have dealer quantities of fentanyl on them. Because what's happening is the one dude overdoses and everybody else splits because they got drugs on them and they don't want to get arrested. And then they call 911 when they're far away from, I don't know, is a payphone a thing? I don't know how they even call 911 without getting caught. And so that addresses that piece of the problem. But we got to get the people who are selling this poison off the street. And so we also, this year we passed stiffer penalties for fentanyl because, this epidemic hit us so fast that fentanyl wasn't even the same class for felony as some of these other hard drugs. And it's way more lethal than heroin. It's way more lethal than cocaine. But it wasn't, it wasn't any more serious. You're selling a pill that has a 60% chance of killing somebody. That, that should have a lot more severe penalty to it. And so we raised those penalties. But honestly, those are all just stopgap measures until we can seal the border.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I did, and I'll wrap up here so I can answer questions, I was the sponsor of a bill, and it was actually co-sponsored because everybody loved the idea so much. It was co-sponsored by enough people to pass the resolution, but it was a resolution to express our support for Texas and their fight to seal the border, and their fight against the federal government, because the federal government doesn't want to seal the border, it doesn't want them to do it. But it was also, it also called on the governor to send law enforcement or the National Guard to help them seal the border. And so that passed overwhelmingly in both houses, but it relies on her because but unfortunately, she's the commander-in-chief of the Kansas Guard. So we gave her the money. We authorized $16 million. The ball's in her court. Does she want to save Kansans or not? All right, I'm going to stop there. I could, as you can tell, I could talk forever about a lot of topics, but I'm going to stop there because I want to hear what's on your mind. Yes, sir.
Question, Pat. We can raise the penalties for fentanyl and all the other drugs and the crime that's out there, but if our prosecutors and the courts are not willing to actually impose a penalty that means something on these thieves, crooks, drug sellers, what good is it? We need an answer to what do you do with these people other than just slapping them on the hand and putting them back on the street.
Well, I'm glad you raised that issue. My opponent, I've known her for several years. I know her husband better than I know her because he came to me with a bill and the Historic Kansas Act, and I got it passed in the legislature. He came to me with the idea. So I've known him longer than I've known her. But she's a lawyer. And she was in a meeting the other day on law enforcement. They had a bunch of prosecutors, law enforcement leaders from across the county at this meeting. And she said some things that I think are the opposite of what we need to do. She's for cashless bail, which has worked great in New York and California. If you watch TV, San Francisco, I'll tell you what, they tried to recall their prosecutor because he was doing cashless bail. She's for not incarcerating people who are arrested for domestic violence and taking them out of the home. Just a bunch of crazy stuff, a bunch of this kind of left-wing ideas about reimagining law enforcement. We need to catch these people that are selling this poison, and we need to put them in the deepest pit that we can dig, because they are aiding and abetting chemical warfare against our country, our state, our community. I mean, we need to put these folks in jail and throw away the key.
Exactly.
Regardless of that, they're murdering or attempting to murder people as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, there's all these second and third order effects that go with this drug business. And it's unfolding on the streets in our city and the streets in cities across Kansas. I mean, it's there's all the violence that goes with it. There's the same rat trails and infiltration routes that are being used for fentanyl are being used to smuggle children to be used for some of the most horrific things that you can imagine. Things that you can imagine because you're a normal human being. And so, fixing this problem has a lot of second and third order effects, beneficial effects. Yes, sir.
Yes, Pat, could you tell us if there's anything being done about Kansas land being sold to foreign entities?
Yes. So we had a package of 3 bills this year to try to address the China threat, because that's on one level the fentanyl problem is the threat from China, right? we had 3 bills this year. One of them we passed, which I'm thrilled that we passed, was about state employee retirement not funding our foreign adversary, right? I'm on the Kansas House Insurance Committee, and 2 years ago, we were shocked to discover that we had tens or hundreds of millions of dollars invested in Russian companies. And the way that we found out is when they nationalized all the businesses and took all our money. And so we lost tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of Kansas retiree money because we can't get it out of those companies because Vladimir Putin, to punish America ahead of the Ukraine war and the sanctions that we were imposing on him, just kept our money, just took our money. But you know what? We're also invested to the tunes of hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in companies that are controlled by China. And so one of the bills that we passed this year that I've been a huge advocate for since that time when Russia stole all our money is the Kansas public employees retirement system cannot invest in countries that are foreign adversaries. And that's not just China, it's Russia, Venezuela. There's like a list that the State Department keeps. And we can't invest in any of those countries. And we have to divest that money and get it back into either in the ideally inside the United States, but at least in countries that are our allies. Another bill was about drone technology. A lot of our law enforcement use drones now, which is no surprise to you. What may be a surprise to you is that they're all built in China.
Yeah.
And they all have Trojan horse technology because when you take that drone and you pipe it to a computer, that computer software is piping it to China.
Yeah.
And this is not a conspiracy theory. I went to a focus group in at the Air Force Academy and a couple other places in Colorado Springs, and they showed it to us. It's happening. This is a thing that is happening. And so what it does is it requires law enforcement to divest from those, and we give them money to get drones that are built in the United States, or at least not by our foreign adversaries. And then the final one was the foreign adversaries not buying land next to our military installations. Especially China. And this isn't a conspiracy theory either, right? So up in the northwest corner of Kansas, at kind of the junction of 3 states, within radio range of Kansas, there are nuclear silos where our nuclear missiles are that defend, that provide the deterrent to defend us against attack from our adversaries that are also nuclear armed. Well, you know what? China went to all the municipalities in that area and sold them Huawei telecommunications equipment at below cost. And guess what's in that technology? Radio jamming technology. So they could shut off those silos without even firing a shot. And so if they wanted to attack, we wouldn't be able to respond. So
How does it happen?
yeah. So what this bill does is prevent China and other foreign adversaries from owning land within range of our military installations. It's not everything, and we weren't even able to get that done. It got bogged down, and the governor vetoed it. We weren't able to override it. And I take to heart the opposition from the other side to this bill. They were saying, hey, this is racist, which they always say. But a couple of the more considered opponents of it, actually, they made a good argument. They're like, hey, whenever we're afraid of another country, we always overact, and we end up infringing on the rights of foreign people living in the United States. Well, I would agree with that, except this bill only applied to foreign nationals that are not resident aliens willing to work in this country. I take that very seriously. I mean, my wife is a naturalized American citizen. She worked in this country for years on a green card. She was a legal a legal immigrant, and she had the ability to work, and she worked for years. And if she had owned a restaurant before she had become a citizen, I wouldn't want the government coming and taking that away from her because she earned that, right? This bill was very specifically tailored to only deal with people who are not legal residents of the United States allowed to work in the United States, which foreign-owned companies, guys that are companies that are buying shell companies and then buying land next to our military installations. And so that's what we're doing on it. We got 1 out of 3, which ain't bad for having a Democrat governor and not having a supermajority that holds together. I'm hoping that we can get more done about this.
So it changes a little bit more because it also addresses people who don't have a lot of money in their pocket. What's the legislature doing to address the rising cost of utilities in Kansas?
Yeah. So I got in a whole bunch of trouble with Evergy this term. So I'm on the Kansas Utilities Committee, and it's utilities, energy, telecommunications. I got a bunch of stuff jammed in there together. And this is my first term on the committee. So I have a mechanical engineering degree. My undergraduate degree is mechanical engineering, but as soon as I finished it, I went in the Army and I never used it my entire career. So I've been dusting off a whole bunch of knowledge that's like in the back of my head with cobwebs all over it, just trying to hang on and keep up with this. But there are really 2 components, and I appreciate you bringing it up. The first one is legislative at the state level. I don't know how this happened, but it happened a long time before me or Representative French were in the legislature. The way our energy costs are determined is not based on supply and demand. We are a net exporter of energy to all of our neighboring states, and we have higher rates than all of our neighboring states. Why is that? That's a good question, Mary. I'm glad you asked that follow-up. So the reason is these big utilities like Evergy, they're a state-sanctioned monopoly, right? We say, hey, you're in charge of delivering electricity. Nobody else can compete with you. The reason we do that is because if we didn't do that, like little towns wouldn't get electricity, because it is not cost effective for Evergy to run power lines out to Kickapoo, which is in my district, or out to, pick your small town, Lomont, pick your small town. It's not cost effective. It's cost effective for them to concentrate all their power energy supply in the big cities. So we have to give them this monopoly so that they can, and then make them give everybody electricity. That's kind of the trade-off. But somewhere, I don't know how it got this way, but somewhere in this back and forth between the state and these big utilities, we set the fee structure so that they get paid for energy infrastructure that they build, not supply and demand. What I mean is, when they build a new power plant, they get paid based on how much it costs to build and to operate that power plant. When they build transmission lines inside the state, and at the time outside the state, to ship our energy outside the state, you're paying for that transmission line so they can sell our energy that we paid for the plant to build in another state. Okay? That's BS. To use a nice way of saying it, that's BS. And so this year, we had in the committee, it was basically, everybody, I saw an advertisement the other day against the Republican state representative candidate, or state senator candidate, Jeff Klemp, and it was like, he's beholden to big business, he's endorsed by the chamber. Well, you know what? I'm endorsed by the chamber too. Folks that want to help business are endorsed by the chamber. What the chamber did for you, the people of Kansas, this session, is they got all of the other companies, except Evergy, which is a member of their organization, to all link arms and band together and come to us and make us change the fee structure so that you're not paying for the infrastructure so that Evergy can ship your electricity out of the state and sell it to somebody else. And we passed that bill this year, so at least it's not gonna get worse. And hopefully with the, inflation the way it is, we will grow our way to where electricity is a reasonable amount of your paycheck every month. The other thing is, this federal government is at war with oil and gas. And I sit in this committee and I have I like Sierra Club come and talk, and all these solar providers and wind providers come and talk, and they're talking about transforming the energy economy and all that. We've been doing this for 3 decades, actually 4 decades, it is when it all kind of started to bubble up. But for 3 decades, we've been building the infrastructure to transform our electric grid and make it green. We are in Kansas, we're one of the #1 wind producers, one of the #1 solar producers in the country, depending on how much the wind's blowing or the sun's shining that day. So in 1980, fossil fuels provided almost 70% of our total energy in the country. Would anybody care to guess what the percentage is today? Almost 70%. It didn't change a bit, because we built all those wind towers, we built all those solar panels, but we also built more coal plants, more natural gas plants, because you would have to cover, this is a fact, you would have to cover 1/3 of the continental United States with wind farms and solar panels. I'm talking square footage. 1/3 of the United States with wind farms and solar panels to completely replace oil and gas and nuclear.
And they're environmental.
Well, and they're-
Yet they want
Yeah.
to be called a green company.
Exactly. And so, half of what I'm doing is voting to change the regulatory structure so you're not paying for the transformer lines to move it out of our state. The other half is just standing against this nonsense.
Yes.
This is nonsense. I'm gonna stop there. I'm sorry, we're 7 minutes over already, but I'm gonna hang out after and talk as long as you wanna talk to me about whatever you wanna talk to me about. Again, thank you so very much for being here today, and thank you for listening to Gab.